Hi, welcome to Chapter 2. In this chapter, we're going to talk about some things that I really hope you're already familiar with, but there might be a few new things to C++. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about are variables and that the data types that we're going to be using in this course. So there are a lot of different data types that you can use to store your data in your programs. There's numbers, characters, words, etc. In this course, we're going to choose to use the following data types for all of our programs. We will use the data type int to store whole numbers or integers. We will use the data type double for storing floating point numbers. So please don't use float, please use double. There's not a huge difference except that doubles are larger and take up more space, and you can have a larger precision with your double. But the other reason that I like to stick with one data type is just because I like to have consistency in my courses. So if you are using float, that's just kind of an indication that you're not following directions in my course. So please use double. We will use char to store characters. And as long as you include the string class, we now will be able to use strings. Strings in C++ are much nicer. They are still actually character arrays, means that they are stored as an array of characters, but there is this string class in C++ which has a lot of features that make dealing with strings much easier than it is dealing with them in the language C. And the next data type is bool. So a bool is a data type that is used for testing things. It has two values, either true or false. So we will be using bool in this course as well. So please keep in mind that these are the data types that I would like for you to use in this course: int, double, char, string, and bool. Of course, we will be using structs and classes later on, but for right now, we can store all of our data to do our programs as either integers, doubles, characters, strings, and we can also use bools. Identifiers. So identifiers are just the names of the variables. And again, I'm assuming that this is your second level programming course, so you already know that your identifiers cannot have space in them, that they you can use underscores or camelback or camel case naming to name them, but they can't start with a number, or they must start with a letter. By convention, in my class, I like to have variables start with a lowercase letter. That is not required in C++ or even C, but just by convention, to keep consistency in my class, I like to have variables named with a lowercase letter. So here's just some different examples of declarations of different data types and assigning values to our variables. Syntax and semantics, I'm hoping that you understand what that means. As far as syntax in C++, it's very similar to C. It is derived from the language C, so C++ came after C, so you can use a lot of C features in C++, but the point is that C++ has a lot of it has object-oriented programming and a lot of extra features. All right, input and output in C++. So when we get into C++, we are not going to be using printf or scanf anymore. So if you took a C class and you used printf and scanf, those will now be replaced with streams, data streams. So we use what's called the extraction operator. cin, extraction operator, extracts data from the keyboard into your program. Cout is called the insertion operator, and this operator is going to put data, flows of data, that's how you have to think of it, onto your screen. So cin will be used instead of scanf, and cout will be used instead of printf. And the nice thing is you don't have to deal with all of the kind of formatting and the placeholders the way that you did in C. In C++, you do it a little bit differently. All right, so when you're using C out and C in, you have to include a library. The library in which includes C out and C in is called IO stream. So you must include IO stream. If you notice in C++, we do not use the .h when you include your libraries. You won't even use .h when you include C libraries either, which we'll get to later. The other thing that you need to include when you're using IO stream, also when you're using string, is this statement right here, using namespace standard. So what happens in C++ is that there are many different types of names. There's, many things that need to be named in programming. So what happens is there might be something that is used in programming that has the same name and it's repeated. And because, there's only so many ways that you can describe things. So what C++ does is it separates all of these different names into collections of names called namespaces. So as long as you say, I'm using the standard namespace, that means that C out and these words C out and C in, C out, C in and C out, C in and C out are part of the standard namespace and they will be used properly in your program. So right now, we will learn a lot more about this. We will learn a lot more about namespaces throughout the semester, but we're just getting started. So right now, make sure that you include IOStream and you include using namespace standard, and you can put this globally on the top of your program. All right, formatting. You can format the same way you do in C, but look at this. We don't have to use placeholders. You just put them, what you want to put onto the screen inside of quotation marks. So the different formatting that we'll deal with, we probably won't deal with alerts, but it's kind of fun to add little alerts in your program. The ones that we really will deal with are new lines, maybe tabbing, the ability to print a backslash onto the screen, which you just put two backslashes together, and the ability to print quotation marks onto the screen. So this is very simple formatting here. And, there's always going to be a lot of different things you can do to format. There are libraries you can include, a manipulation library and stuff like that. But for right now, we just want to focus on just being able to do the most basic type of formatting and learn about different things as we go. All right, so later in the semester, we will learn about how C out and C in are functions. But right now, we're just going to how C out and C in are objects with functions. Sorry about that. So right now, we're just going to learn about the magic formula. The magic formula is used to place the decimal places when you want to print a double onto the screen. So as long as you put this magic formula, these three instructions, if you notice they have dot operators here, so those of you who are familiar with how the dot operator works, you will see that this is C out, which is an object, dot set F, which is a function, and then it's telling you these are the arguments that you pass to the function. So we will be learning more about that later in the semester. For right now, if you want to put decimal points into your program, which you will be doing in program 1, you use this magic formula, which is 3 statements. The first one is just saying that you do not want your, and you can experiment with these to see what happens, but this is to put decimal places into your when you display in C out. So the first one is saying you do not want to use E notation. You want it to be, so it's called fixed. The second one is that you want to display the decimal point. So you could set that you don't want to display it. There is a table in your book in which you can look up these different formatting. And the third one is just saying how many decimal places you would like to display onto the screen. So if you put this magic formula, these 3 statements above anywhere that you display your doubles, then this then it will display everywhere below this as indicated here. Now, like if you put this in the beginning of your main function, then everywhere in your main function, it will use this magic formula. If you want to make a change, you would have to change the statement above where you want to make the change. So, but if it's local in your function, then it will be, and don't do this globally. Put this inside. At this point, we haven't done any program or defined functions, so please put this inside of your main function above where you're going to be printing the information onto the screen. All right, so here's just an example of how to use the insertion operator and the extraction operator. I've declared two variables. If you notice here, we don't need to use %d, you just, it automatically, once you declare these integers, then you use the extraction operator to read two integers from the keyboard. I purposely put this here to tell you that yes, you can get two inputs at once. I personally think it's better to prompt for each input. So I would, if I were to write this program, I would have a cout statement that says enter the number of pies, cin to number of pies, and then a cout statement, enter the number of slices, and then a cin for the number of slices. So I would take these two statements and make them 4 statements because I think that's a better experience for the user. All right, now we're going to talk about expressions. Expressions are not statements. Statements end in a semicolon, and those are instructions that tell the computer what to do. Expressions are combinations of variables and operations that result in a value. So the places that you've used expressions in the past, if you took a C class, would be a mathematical expression. So on the right side of the assignment operator, let's see if I have a, so right here, this right here, this is an expression. So after you take this variable called total and you divide it by the number of winners, in the end you have a result. That is an expression. If you do an if condition, the test inside of your parentheses will result in either true or false. That is also an expression. We're going to do a lot of examples of expression right here. This is just the definition of what an expression is. This is a, these are variable declarations. I already went over that, and I was just saying how the size of the different variables and that we will not use float in this class. String class. The string class is another class that you are going to be using right away. And in addition to IOStream, you also want to make sure you put using namespace standard because the string members are also part of the standard namespace. So on the top of your program, which I have an example in a moment, be sure that you include using namespace standard. You don't have to include it twice. You just include it once. You put your two libraries up there, and then the string and the IOStream, and then one time you say using namespace standard. All right, types, data types. So you want to be in control of your data types, and you don't want to assign the wrong type of data to the wrong type of variable. So you don't want to assign a double to an integer to a double. You want to typecast. The way that you're supposed to typecast in C++ is to use this very long static cast way. However, you can use the C way and it will do the same thing. So if you notice here, this variable called total is an integer, but I want to make sure that I'm doing double math, and when I do the math, I want my total to be a double. So then it will assign the result to this double. And when you are doing math, and again, just to repeat, this is an expression right here, because at the end it will result in it will have a result. So if you are doing math, as long as one of your operands is a double, even though num winners is an integer and total is a double, then you will do double math. If you wanted to be sure that you got a double result, you could also cast num winners to a double. You can use either way to typecast in this class. I think that this way is easier, the C way. So like I said, there's a lot of C things that you can use in C++, and there are some things that you don't. All right, moving on. Math, an order of precedence. C++ is just like C in that respect. You can also use parentheses. So these are just mathematical expressions and formulas. So you should be familiar with how to do math in C before coming to this class in your introductory course, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. Shortcut. All right, so shortcut notation is encouraged if you understand how to use it. I introduce it in my C classes. So basically you can take this expression right here, count plus 2, and the result will be assigned to count. So that means you want count to go up by 2. The shortcut notation for that is count plus equals 2. Personally, in my class, I don't care if you use what way you do it. I want you to understand what you're doing. So be sure that you understand what's happening in your programs. Flow of control. Flow of control is when you change, when you have decisions in your program. So that's if, else, that changes the flow. So if you have conditions that are going to, say if the age is over 21, you're going to do something, and if the age is less than or equal to 21, you'll do something else. That's a change in flow. Another change in flow is something that repeats, which is looping. So there's two different changes of flow in your program that can happen. There are flow charts. You can use flow charts to plan out your flow. You can use numerical algorithms to plan out your flow. But this is something that you have to understand your problem really well in order to understand how to change the flow in your program. The techniques that are used in C++ are the same as those used in C. When you want to branch or make a decision, you use if or cascaded ifs, if, else if, else if, else. And when you want to loop, you use while, do while, or for loops. We're going to start with while and do while loops and add on for loops. The way that you test your conditions, the expressions for your conditions is the same as you learned in your first programming class: less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, equal equals. I like to say equals equals, so you remember to use two equal signs, not equal to, and there's logical ands and logical ors. So if you did not, the book is very good, and the slides are very good. So if you need a little review on how to do if else and while and do while loops, please read the book. And also you could send me an email. I can send you back. I have some C videos that are on YouTube that have a more detailed review of if else and while and do while loops. So this is your second class, so it's assumed that you have an understanding of how to develop loops and how to use if else and cascaded. All right, so here's an example of doing if else. So in this case, we can go through this a little bit. You have C out and C in. So you C out for your prompt. It's just like printf. Then you have to declare your variables ahead of time. You have to be prepared to store your data. All variables must be declared before you're using them. They don't need to be declared at the beginning of a function, but they do need to be declared before you use them. Here's a reminder that we're using IOStream for C out and C in, so we want to make sure that we have using namespace standard included in this example. So here is our prompt. Enter the hourly rate. We will see in the rate. Once again, you will notice that you do not need to use placeholders, so that's a nice feature. You also can, if your C out is getting too long, you can break it up into two lines in your compiler. That's perfectly legal. It will end here at this statement. So you don't have to write two C out statements. You can break your C out into two lines. You can use \n in your C out If it's inside of a string, it's much more convenient to do that. And in a minute, I probably have an example here where you can use endline. And then here's just you're checking if hours is over than 40, then you're going to do this calculations. And if it's not, you're going to do a different calculation. If you notice here on my if condition, I have curly braces because I am doing two statements. You must make a block of code when you're doing more than one statement. If you have only one statement, then you do not need to use curly braces, but I encourage you to at least go to the next line and indent so you have a very nice, easy to read code. And as a reminder, this right here is an expression that will evaluate to true or false. So an expression could be, this is also an expression which will evaluate to a numerical result. So an expression can evaluate either to true or false, or an expression can evaluate to the result of a mathematical expression. There's mathematical expressions and there's Boolean expressions. And here's where I'm using the magic formula in order to print the results onto the screen. I could change this to a 3 or 4 depending on how much precision I wanted to be displayed in my result. And here is a very simple while loop. So we have here a while loop, and actually I'm going to come back to this while loop and do that in the next video because I have a code example and I'm going to do that in the compiler. All right, programming style. It's very important that you have good programming style in this course and that you follow my instructions and my guidelines for what I want in this course. It's okay to add some things for your own style, but your code should be very easy to read. You should have your blocks of code indented inside of your blocks and your local information, very easy to identify what belongs with which header. You should have a lot of comments around that describe. You should have a very good descriptive header comment, and it's very, very important that you follow my guidelines, and I will be reiterating that with each video and each example that I do throughout the course. All right, so I'm going to stop here and go to the next video in which we're going to put some code in the compiler and take a look at that.